Yes, sir. Walaikum assalam.
As Muslims on college campuses, we meet people of all different types of philosophies, and amongst the best people that I've met are pacifists who really believe in achieving justice in the world. And they make the argument that violence begets violence. And they ask the question, how could the destruction of life lead to anything constructive? As Mahatma Gandhi has put it as saying, an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. So how are we to respond?
I think that the question is, he's met a lot of very enlightened people as a university student here on campus, and some of the most enlightened are pacifists. And they frequently ask him, how can violence ever lead to anything good when violence only begets further violence? And that, as Gandhi said, an eye for an eye will lead to a blind world. I think that the argument is overstated, because overwhelming force in the face of aggression has frequently stopped that aggression. I mean, if the world stood blindly by or idly by and allowed Hitler to proceed and didn't take firm action, I think that we all can agree that the consequences would have been extremely undesirable. So it's a very deep question that requires a lot of contemplation, but I think history shows that violence doesn't necessarily beget further violence. And I think this example is a good example, that violence in the case of stopping Hitler didn't lead to a subsequent war in Europe. If anything, it was one of the instrumental catalysts in unifying Europe and making the European community possible. So I think that we have to really look at historically, is this in fact true, that violence inevitably begets further violence? And I think the answer is that it doesn't. Now, does this totally answer the ethical question? No, but I think it's a strong consideration, and we should ask pacifists to reflect on. I think some of the deepest reflections in this regard are those of Reinhold Niebuhr, who was a pacifist, but in light of the totalitarian violence that was destroying Europe, he engaged in a very principled reformulation of his ideas, because you had people like Hitler, you had people like Stalin, and other totalitarianisms during the past century, which had to inevitably be checked. Now, could they have been checked without violence, resorting to violence? I think that's questionable. That they could not have been. Any sisters have any questions?